Oh, he's the book guy. Those years coffee.
Really?
I feel like I'm in Rick's chair.
But you are in Rick's chair. Let's see a different.
Yeah. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good.
Great.
A smaller circle this time.
Everyone was afraid of the snow.
What's that?
They were afraid the snowstorm was coming.
Maybe some people are
they
preparing
decided
for the
they'd just-
turkey.
Yeah, they just sleep.
Yeah. People are starting on the Thanksgiving dinner.
How much
already.
more opportunity do we have there?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, think about how active our brokerage is, and this is what showed up today. Equity's empty today.
It shows a lot about you guys. You could use that in your role play.
Did you come from equity?
No, I'm just kidding. I knew you came from Equity, right? Or was it somewhere else?
No, I was. Geez, I've been so many brokerages.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I haven't heard of equity.
It's good.
It was
It's good.
It's okay, you haven't missed anything.
Okay, guys, let's hear it. Gratitudes, wins, victories. I hope there's a lot of gratitudes today. Yeah, sure.
I just closed on my first home.
What?
Whoa.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
that's
Awesome.
That's a good feeling. Yeah.
How long did that take you?
A month? Right?
Yeah.
Good. And isn't it amazing? Like, since we were talking, like 1 minute I know you were talking about this. 1 minute you're working and you feel like you're spinning your wheels, and then how quickly things can change in this, right? We keep talking about it, but literally the person you are from one day to the next can be completely different. You're like, there's opportunity everywhere, everything. I can make any changes I want, and I have power over everything, and then another day it may be an off day, but things can change. Like today, things can change like right now.
In
Awesome.
a moment,
Thank you.
when I was new, I knocked on the door and I said, is there any reason why you need to sell your property? And he said, yes, I need to be in hurricane in 2 months. Come in. Right then, we did it.
Wow.
Just like that. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but in a moment, it
Yep.
can be really cool.
And you hand wrote an ERS if you have to sign right there, right?
Well, you got a napkin out?
Yeah. Like sign on my arm.
Yeah.
Like have to take a picture of it. So it does. It's literally just the cool thing about this business, because things can change, is how many times are we limiting us from potential great things happening when we don't step out, right? And there's so many stories like that.
It reminds me, last January, we got in our office and I looked at Eric, my grandson who I work with, and I looked at our board and I said, guess what? We have no business. This is our first day in real estate. Let's go. And I really had nothing. I had no listings, nothing. Everything had closed. And from there we started.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is, just one day.
You made a decision.
You always start
Yeah.
at zero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Awesome.
Resetting every day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm grateful for this group in April. He called me up the other day and wished me Happy Veterans Day, and I was like, wow, just to wish me. But I am so grateful for each one and every one of you. It just brings such a light to my life. And I wanted to share with the whole group of my conviction of why I'm in the business, and I was sharing it with you guys, is that I personally believe that 80% of the realtors out there are really not doing a superb job for their clients, and it's causing a big problem in the marketplace. And I really believe that if we do not strive as hard as we can and commit to ourselves and be as confident as we possibly can, that we can damage a lot of relationships between the public and realtors. We have to be the best. We have to step up. We have to be those agents that are willing to be able to say what we need to say and come here every day and develop our skills so that public out there does not have to suffer
I love that.
the faults of others that are not really doing their job.
I love that. So well said.
Yeah.
I love that when you were sharing that, Evan, before I was thinking about that script where it's like, I would not be doing my job if I ask one more time for an appointment, because I learned over the years, if I don't, you might end up with a mediocre agent and lose money, right? But I want to say I'm grateful for this environment that we're here today, the day before Thanksgiving. I'm also grateful that, there's so much opportunity out there, and it's just up to me and my mindset to go obtain it. So.
Awesome. Well said.
You know, it took Lindsay 9 times to sell me. to bring
Yeah,
here.
she's telling me that.
And, you know, I keep on thinking about that. What's going to take to bring somebody with us? Do I have to close them 9 times? I'll do it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Great. Anyone else?
I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful to be here with this company. I don't think I've ever been around a more positively charged environment, and it's just awesome
Man.
just to be in such a positive place.
Yeah.
Big compliment.
Yeah, we meet
Yeah.
people that feel that way.
Yeah.
It's nice to be surrounded by that.
And I have to say, like, if I like bet on one agent or the other one, like, you being brand spanking new and showing up in the morning and coming to Peak Agent yesterday, like, I'll bet on you every time. So it doesn't matter like what people have accomplished in the past or what they've done. The fact that you're doing this, and if you stay consistent, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be awesome. Okay. Announcements. Yeah, Tony Robbins. I know like everyone like out there wants to say like, I bet. And I know it's happened in the past where sometimes, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but you see a discount, and then especially with Tony Robbins, like maybe like 3 months later, you're like, wait, the price went down again. But, and so people have that like Black Friday thing. Like, I'm going to wait until after Thanksgiving and see what happens. Lindsay has said, and this is what motivated me to like take action. She said, I believe like today or Thanksgiving or whenever it is.
After the next couple of days, it's gonna go up.
Yeah. So she knows very well. So please reach out to her. Just like you're doing now, if you're stepping into something new, always means something new will happen for you. And there's going to be new opportunity that comes your way. That impacted me a great deal. I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for that Tony Robbins event I went to. It shifted my focus big time. But please sign up. Yeah.
There's base camp though.
Oh,
Today.
base
Yeah.
camp today.
You
Yeah,
can't
with
see it
Christopher.
from where you're sitting,
Yes,
so.
with Christopher.
Credit.
So please come.
Credit.
If you've come
Credit.
before when he's spoken, he has a very good idea and an excellent way of explaining like market trends. And I know a lot of times we hear people talk about, oh, the recession, what's going to happen? Is there a recession? What does it mean? And all this stuff,
Yeah.
another bubble. But he will give you some great ideas of how to address those things. And he's also explaining the lending process.
And it's great because if you're going to offer value to your clients, it's really good to know the different type of loans that you can use to your
Yeah.
advantage when you're having that conversation. So
Yeah.
please be there. It's really informative.
Thanks for
What, is it 11?
11:30.
11:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's the same group that's going to be there. Hope to see you all there.
Maybe.
Yeah. So hopefully it doesn't dwindle more. Hopefully you all come. So who is reading the book or has read the book? I know we always ask that question. April, Brenda Lee, awesome.
Heard it.
Awesome. Good. I've been where you're seated in the past when people ask that question. Maybe I'm reading another book at the time and I'm trying to hurry and finish it, or I fall behind in the reading. But I will say, like, George has endorsed this one day. I know Rob yesterday said it was one of his top 3 books he's ever read. And if you guys have been, like during my business planning base camp or a couple other times I've given it to a few of you, but at a rough time in my life when I was reading this, I wrote my own kind of credo or commitment challenge for myself that I signed and dated. And a lot of that was based off of things that I read in this book. So a lot of thoughts in here are, and
What's the book called?
The Traveler's Gift. I highly recommend it. But so today we're going to be going over chapters 4 and 5. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to read like a couple excerpts, and I'd also like to get your guys' feedback of where you've found impact in these things. But
Who's it by?
Andy Andrews.
Amy and
Andy.
Are you going to do the special voices?
I can't even. Rick would for role play, right? But no, I can't. I can't do a southern voice with an accent. That'd be really tough. If you listen to the Audible, it's pretty funny. Yeah, he's actually really good at taking on different characters' voices. Okay, so what's happening? I'm going to give you a quick recap in interest of time. What's happening is this individual is just, his back is against the wall. As soon as he thinks like life can't get any worse, things happen. and I think a lot of us have been in those situations. In fact, his situation really makes me take a step back and be like, okay, things aren't that bad for me. Like, it could be a lot worse. And anyway, he goes into this state, or you could call it a dream, whatever you want, and he is appearing to different individuals, very successful individuals, recognized individuals throughout history, and they are giving him, pointers on things that he needs to learn. The first individual that he appeared to was President Truman, and he had a conversation with President Truman about taking ownership. The buck stops here, and what that means, and how we can't take control of our lives, we can't move forward until we take ownership for anything and everything that is happening in our lives, which is pretty neat. So he then, after having a conversation with President Truman, which would be pretty cool, he then goes back into this trance state or whatever it is, and he wakes up again. And in this situation, does anyone want to take it from here? What happens? Like, where does he appear to in chapter 4? You guys remember?
I have to look up my notes.
Okay. Maybe I can help get us started. This is King Solomon.
Yeah, King Solomon.
King Solomon of all people. So talk about a random place to appear in different periods of time. And he literally appears during, if you're not familiar with it, most of us are, where two women are fighting over a baby. One says, this is my baby, it's hers, he's going to divide the baby. One says, fine. The other one says, no, she can have the baby, and that's the mother. Hopefully we're all familiar with that.
Yeah.
And then a conversation ensues with King Solomon, which is pretty interesting.
Isn't King Solomon supposed to be like the wealthiest person that ever existed?
And wisest,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, but you know what he did is he prayed not for wealth, but he prayed for wisdom, and he became wealthy because of his wisdom.
Perfect segue. Yeah, so he's going to talk to this guy David about wisdom, the importance of gaining wisdom. Does anyone, for those that have read it or are reading it, does anyone want to add anything from this chapter that impacted you in the past or right now about what was said?
I have a thought a little bit off. A couple of my favorite books are Think and Grow Rich and Psycho-Cybernetics. And it's interesting, I kind of think that this book could have been a creation from something you read in Think and Grow Rich. Because in Think and Grow Rich, what he says is to have a mastermind. And he says it doesn't need to be people that are living right now. He said, think of people in the past, people you can learn from, learn everything you can from them, and have them be your mentors.
Yeah. Wow.
And I thought that was,
It's awesome.
I'm sure that this is that same concept, like use these people as your mentors, for sure.
Yeah, someone doesn't have to be your neighbor or someone you see every day to be your mentor. I love that. I've had the same thing in my life. I used to think like, oh, how do I approach so-and-so? How does this work? And no, they can be a mentor from afar. So that's awesome. So anyway, he's talking to King Solomon in the beginning, and he's trying to figure out like, what am I here for with King Solomon and things like that. And let's see. So they sit down to eat, and then in part of the conversation, King Solomon says to David, let's see. David's like, why am I here? What am I supposed to pass on? Why me? Why me of all people going through this experience? And
Are you talking about King David, his father?
No, David is the individual throughout this storyline. Just some guy. The narrative is following, and he's the one appearing to different people throughout history. So, good question. So one thing that King Solomon starts to get into is it's up to you to prepare yourself for whatever that might be in the future. And so I'm going to read just this excerpt. It's David leans forward and he says, I think I understand what you were saying. You mean I have to prepare for whatever is in store. And then King Solomon nods, and then he says, then here's a question, David said almost sarcastically. How do I prepare for something when I don't know A, what it is, or B, when it will happen? And then King Solomon was quiet. He says, sir, David said it again because obviously he's going through a very difficult stage in his life. And then he said, look, I'm serious. How do I prepare for an uncertain future? I think a lot of times we've been there, right? Like, what is next? What is going on, right? I need to know. I need to know what's going to happen next. And then the king just said very simply, seek wisdom. And David, he starts to roll his eyes, even almost, and he's like, well, yeah, but he says, maybe I'm not too smart, he said, but I'm just not catching on here. Okay, let me ask you this. How do I seek wisdom? And then he says, the answer I have for you will not quell your frustration with me, the king replied, and then paused, and he said, my answer is to seek wisdom. So David's getting a little frustrated. Don't we get in those situations a lot of times, like, just tell me the answer. Like, what do I do? Give me the answer right now. And then he says, David, you have a condition common to most people. You hear, but you do not listen. He says after this, seek wisdom. Seek wisdom. Wisdom waits to be gathered. She cannot be bartered or sold. She is a gift for the diligent, and only the diligent will find her. The lazy man, the stupid man, never even looks. Though wisdom is available to many, she is found by few. Seek wisdom. Find her, and you will find success and contentment. So what do you guys think of that? Yeah.
I remember the story of Captain Sullenberger that landed his airplane in the Hudson and saved 155 lives in '09. And I remember in the movie, it was commented that he may have had time to get back to the airport instead. But there was like 20 or 30 seconds unaccounted for in the simulations to try to prove that he made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And he pointed out that during those 20 to 30 seconds, it was coming up with a plan of what to do. And it was his wisdom to just hold on for a second and think, what's the right thing to do here? Rather than make a dash decision. And that brought that out in my mind.
Yeah.
It's wisdom to think before you speak sometimes, or act.
Anyone else? Thought about that?
Yeah, the thing I like about that mostly is when you're seeking out the wisdom, when you're seeking, when you just like want to know, or maybe like what Evan said, it's maybe seeking wealth versus the wisdom. Those are destinations, right? It's like, oh, I just want to know the answer to my problem. I want to be rich, or I want to have this. I want to have this possession, and it's like that's destination where seeking wisdom is just a journey, right? There's unlimited wisdom to obtain, right? And so it's falling in love with that process.
That's really, you're reminding me right now, have we not heard before someone say, figure it out? I mean, is that kind of the same thing? We go through these situations, I do, we all do, and we want something, we want to accomplish something, and we're just not figuring out. And you're in that like really uncomfortable stage that I just don't like this, and what do we do? What do I do? A lot of times I start pointing to circumstances. We point to whether it's around real estate, the market, or today's a bad day, people aren't answering phones, or whatever it might be, or if it's relationship based, oh, if only that person would act a certain way, where it's really hard to look inward at ourselves and say, like, what do I need to do to figure this out? Yeah.
So I searched it. It says knowledge means how much factual information we know and the skills a person knows. Wisdom refers to the ability to apply that knowledge in the most skillful way to make the best decisions for both you, yourself, and others. So it's just like, think.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like it said, you took 20 seconds to decide, where am I going to take this plane?
Yeah. An important part between those two things is wisdom is also eventually taking action. Mm-hmm. Knowledge, a lot of people sit back and say, oh, well, I already know that. You know what I mean? So it's important to take action also. Again, I'd recommend reading this, but so David replies and he says, I certainly don't have success or contentment in my life right now. And then King Solomon says, it's all part of the past. Then he says, but you can change the future by changing your actions today. It is really a very simple process. We as humans are always in a process of change. So we're always in a process of change. As much as we think things aren't changing, we're changing. Therefore, we might as well guide the direction in which we change. Then David replies, how do I guide that direction? And then King Solomon, he uses an example. He says, do you have a child? And he's kind of thinking, well, this is weird. And he says, yeah, I have a 12-year-old. And the king says, are you concerned about the children with whom your daughter plays? He says, of course. And then, so David's a little confused by this. And he says, why? He says, well, I say, of course, because my child's friends have such an effect on her. And I mean both good and bad. We've noticed that when she is around good, respectful children, we very rarely have a problem with her behavior. But occasionally she'll mix in with the wrong group of people, and her mother and I have to deal with the consequences at home. And then King Solomon says, consequences? So David's not quite connecting this. And then King Solomon says, and at what age are we no longer affected by those around us? 18, 21, 30? The answer, of course, is that we are always and forever influenced by those with whom we associate. If a man keeps company with those who curse and complain, he will soon find curses and complaints flowing like a river from his mouth. If he spends his days with the lazy, those seeking handouts, he will soon find his finances in disarray. Many of our sorrows can be traced to relationships with the wrong people. Yeah, and then David says, so this is an important step in seeking wisdom. And then King Solomon says, possibly the most important step. Guard your associations carefully. Isn't that interesting that our associations tie in so much with wisdom? Anyone have any thoughts about that?
Well, you know, it's all about your environment too. I mean, that's the reason why it's so key. I bounced around to a lot of different brokerages. I started out with Coldwell Banker. I went to All Pro, which is a cheap company. I've been through like Remax, you know, all over the place. And this was the only environment that was conducive. And as soon as I came here, my business doubled. And if it's all about the environment that you put yourself in that creates that synergy. And once you're in the right environment, it just blossoms. But if you're around the wrong environment, it will not blossom. And I've tried. I actually came to Realty Executives, which was run by George before. And I started doing really well. I was starting taking listings left and right, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, I'll go ahead and take this information. I'll go back to a cheap company and we'll play the same game. That way I don't have to pay as much. And it didn't work. I fell flat on my face. And then, you know, then I eventually came back. But
That's interesting. We hear that a lot. Yeah.
Sorry, if I remember right, I think part of that example talks about accountability somewhere in there. And so like in your example, I think maybe you had some of the information, but you didn't have people around you that could hold you accountable. And
no.
I think that's a big part of wisdom, is having people around you that are going to push you upward and forward and hold you accountable.
I love that. You know, just to add to that as well, is being wise is also being very vulnerable and truthful to yourself. Because if you don't want to be around that environment, it's going to start eating at you big time. Like, I've had to get rid of some people that are toxic in my life, and a lot of things, everyone's going through so much in their life where they have gone through certain situations, and it's all about how you look at it. Who do you want to be around? Who's going to bring more to your life versus take away? This environment drives me every morning as well. You know, after everything that you go through, I'm grateful for being here and around the people that I am all the time. It's great. It drives your life. It gives you purpose. Eventually, like when you leave from here and you don't have a listing plan, but you know that you've made contact and you've had good conversations, and you write down, when I write down my gratitude that night, like the 5 things that's happened to me through the day, even like our conversation, Matt, like he held me accountable. I had to take them to lunch. It was great. It was wonderful. But it's those type of environments that can drive you, but you have to be truthful to yourself if you actually want to do those things. So it comes back to what you were saying. I came here and it was because somebody asked me those extra 3 questions.
That's awesome. And
You know?
man, I have to. So the next chapter is actually the chapter I want to spend more time on, but I have to add this. I've felt this personally in my own life, and this is very important for me to share. But a lot of times, and I've heard this from other agents, a lot of times we make unfair comparisons with ourselves based off of results. And what I mean by that is, I might say, or an agent might say, oh, well, I can't talk to so-and-so because they've done this much business. How do I talk to them? How I'm not on their level, right? And I kid you not, if you're feeling uncomfortable to be around them, one, your focus is in the wrong place on the outlying things like the results and production, or if it's something else in another part of your life. But this is probably the most important part for me. And Ruby hit on this, if we're taking the right actions, we are not uncomfortable around anyone. If I know that I am doing the right things and doing hard things, your confidence will grow enormously. And my first question, because of what I've been through, to that agent was, is it your results you feel uncomfortable with, or what you're doing day in and day out that you feel uncomfortable with? And that's where confidence lies. It doesn't lie in the results, it lies in what you're doing. So Ruby hit on that in a great way. Like, when she focuses on doing the right things, that's when she's able to have those associations with people that she should have. Yep. So, so I'm going to do this in 5 minutes. What I'd actually like to do is, I'd like to share the next chapter and where he shows up, and just kind of quickly the circumstance and individual he's with. And then from there, whoever has the book, I'd really like us to read together the last portion here. So at the end of every visitation he has with someone, they give him kind of a summary or a credo or whatever it is that he can take with him to remember. All right. So King Solomon, likewise, he gives him like a small scroll that he can refer to later, and it's about wisdom. I highly recommend you look at that. Going into chapter 5, so as soon as he starts reading this, apparently he goes into like a sleep state, or he faints, or whatever you want to call it, and then he wakes up in another place. Now he wakes up during the Civil War. So, I mean, this guy's just rocked. Like, he keeps waking up in different situations, and he's literally wakes up in the middle of a battle. And he's with Colonel Chamberlain, I believe, and he's kind of even saying to him throughout this, he's like, but you aren't even famous. Why am I here right now, and stuff like that. And so you have literally, they're fighting the rebels. They're at the top of this hill, and the rebels are outnumbering them. And in this current situation, in this battle, they are the left flank, and they cannot secede the left flank, because if the rebels get through, they'll be able to just desolate the rest of the army. And they are just grossly outnumbered. The rebels have made one charge, and they've been able to fight them back. And then they come back and report, and the rebels haven't left, and they're in the trees, like hiding at the bottom of the hill and ready to surge again. And then they take inventory of what's going on, and they say, literally, like, we've lost half our troops already. We have maybe 1 to 2 rounds left of ammunition, and it is bleak. I mean, bleak, bleak, bleak. And then, so this colonel is faced with this, and David's witnessing how this colonel is facing this in this situation. And basically at the end, he says, so literally he's faced with, we retreat and we give up basically the whole army to the rebels, and we give them a free way through, or we have to fight. And so I'll just quickly read this, but he just decides, he tells his men to fix their bayonets, and they're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, excuse me? We're really outnumbered here. And he repeats that, and even though he's scared, like, he knows he has to have the resolve and be a leader in this situation. And then there's another portion, and it just says, with a power born of righteousness and fear, the so he's a former school teacher, and from Maine roared, charge to his men, and they did. Tumbling over the wall, the men who were left rose their voices to meet the voice of their leader. Charge, they cried, charge, charge. David rushed to the wall, looking downhill. He was stunned to see the advancing Confederate force stop in its tracks. Almost immediately the soldiers turned and ran. A few of the braver souls emptied their rifles before dropping them to follow the rest. About 70 yards down the slope, David caught sight of Chamberlain. He had left his hand on the trunk of a tree, and in his right he held the sword, the point of which was resting on the collarbone of a rebel officer. The man held his hands up. It was over. So one thing cool about this whole experience is I've been in situations before where it's just consistent, like, coming in at you. And what I am fascinated by is myself and other individuals to look at them, and there's one of two things to do. There's, like, you ball up in a corner and you just say, please go away, like, please make it stop, and you just wait for it to be over, and usually that's a point in which we settle and we take the allotment, or we accept the consequences or circumstances of life. And then there's another side where someone literally just, like, goes all out, where they say charge, where they fight. And what's amazing is on the other side of that, what people become from it. And what's also amazing is we realize just how powerful we are in those situations, and that we truly can affect and decide what happens in our lives and where we get. So for those that have the book, there's probably like 4 or 5 paragraphs. Are you guys okay to read this together? But it's pretty powerful.
And I wanted to
Yeah.
add a point to that.
Yeah, please.
When things kind of start to unravel and they fall apart around you, if you close your eyes, and you just try to hide, they still fall apart and they get worse. There is an agent that got overwhelmed and she just stopped communicating flat out, but she didn't know how many people that are affected by her not being able to communicate or shutting down. If you're able to face it and you can keep calm and collected, you can solve any problem. And I had to actually show her that. I kept my cool because I had to jump in and kind of save both ends. But time doesn't stop, and neither does the situations. And then once you open your eyes, you're just playing catch up, and that's the worst thing to do. But people sometimes don't realize, like, yeah, if I close my eyes, the problems might go away. But no, you stand still, time doesn't, and situations don't. So it's just better to face them and fight and be a soldier. It's hard in this business. It's really difficult sometimes. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with this. How am I going to do this? But if you just stay calm and face it, then you can actually get through so much more. The time still passes. It depends on you how long you want to stand still.
Yeah.
Right?
That's awesome. Thank you, Ruby. One thing that someone said to me once before is, when things come my way, if I'm trying to react to it, am I attacking it with like a feather, or am I taking a sledgehammer to it? You guys know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
If a challenge comes your way, like, how do you respond? And that's where you see how powerful you are. So if you have the book, it's on page 69, and this is that note that Colonel Chamberlain left with him. And it talks about taking action. Who has it? I can read it if I need to. Okay, I'll just read it. Is that okay?
Yeah. No.
Okay. It's the third decision for success. I am a person of action. Beginning today, I will create a new future by creating a new me. No longer will I dwell in a pit of despair, moaning over squandered time and lost opportunity. I can do nothing about the past. My future is immediate. I will grasp it in both hands and carry it with running feet. When I'm faced with the choice of doing nothing or doing something, I will always choose to act. I seize this moment. I choose now. I am a person of action. I am energetic. I move quickly. Knowing that laziness is a sin, I'll create a habit of lively behavior. I will walk with a spring in my step and a smile on my face. The lifeblood rushing through my veins is urging me upward and forward into activity and accomplishment. Wealth and prosperity hide from the sluggard, but rich rewards come to the person who moves quickly. I am a person of action. I inspire others with my activity. I am a leader. Leading is doing. To lead, I must move forward. Many people move out of the way for a person on the run. Others are caught up in his wake. My activity will create a wave of success for the people who follow. My activity will be consistent. This will instill confidence in my leadership. As a leader, I have the ability to encourage and inspire others to greatness. It is true, an army of sheep led by a lion would defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. I am a person of action. I can make a decision. I can make it now. A person who moves neither left nor right is destined for mediocrity. When faced with a decision, many people say they are waiting for God, but I understand, in most cases, God is waiting for me. He has given me a healthy mind to gather and sort information and the courage to come to a conclusion. I am not a quivering dog, indecisive and fearful. My constitution is strong and my pathway is clear. Successful people make their decisions quickly and change their minds slowly. Failures make their decisions slowly and change their minds quickly. My decisions come quickly and they lead to victory. I am a person of action. I am daring. I am courageous. Fear no longer has a place in my life. For too long, fear has outweighed my desire to make things better for my family. Never again. Never again. I have exposed fear as a vapor, an imposter that never had any power over me in the first place. I do not fear opinion, gossip, or the idle chatter of monkeys, for all are the same to me. I do not feel failure, for in my life failure is a myth. Failure exists only for the person who quits. I do not quit. I am courageous. I am a leader. I seize this moment. I choose now. I am a person of action.
Wow. That's powerful.
What do you guys think? Any
Wow.
final thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Well, the lion-sheep example is perfect because if a sheep's in front of a bunch of lions, they're not gonna just sit there. They're gonna go somewhere else. They're not gonna follow the sheep.
Yeah.
There's no way. Nobody follows a leader that just sits and cowers. Like, you have to take action and people are gonna follow. And when people follow, you know, you'll be a lot more successful.
Yes. You know, when I was in the military, I had to get the mindset that I didn't care about if I lived or died. It's just how I served. And it didn't matter if I, whatever. And I could not overcome my fears if I did not care if I lived or died.
Wow.
So, if you're in the battle and bullets are flying around you, and you cower down, 9 times out of 10, those are the soldiers that get hurt. But if you stand up in adversity and take on whatever's in front of you, no matter what the danger is, you'll be able to overcome.
Wow. Thank you. And it carries over. You can
So
recognize
much
it,
respect
right?
for you.
When you're around someone that just reeks of fear and they feel incapable and they just try and say the right things, you can feel it. That's the interesting thing. We go through the scripts and role plays in the morning. You've got to believe it. You have to believe it. And when you share that, you are effectively leading in every situation. When someone challenges you and says you're not capable of helping them, but you know without a doubt that you are capable of helping them, you win. Your certainty wins. Certainty wins. Okay? Let's have an awesome day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did she text us on her way? Okay. She's supposed to be here at 9, so.
All right, all right.
All right, let's go.
We have an extra chair.
No, this one wasn't there. Or it was over there.